When it comes to reaching a campus, what is the best approach? Hey, today we're going to be talking about why spiritual multiplication is our goal. Hey, this is Kevin.
And this is Mark.
This is Go to the Campus with Crew,
where we talk about how to reach teenagers with the gospel on a high school campus. This show is a part of the Crew Core Concepts series that we're doing. There's 6 kind of core concepts that we say, this is really what we believe in Crew. We want to make sure that people know what our high school ministry is founded on. And some of the other things that we're talking about in this series include, when in doubt, go to campus, that we share Christ at the first opportunity, that we're student-led, adult-directed, that we value transferable tools and materials, and that we're dependent on the Holy Spirit. But today we're going to talk about the value of spiritual multiplication.
Mark, I can't think of a better and more important subject, obviously, because Crew, I believe, was founded upon the principle, all these core concepts, it's like the body's DNA for what we do and why we do it. And so spiritual multiplication comes in a very strong sense as you look at a campus and say, how in the world can we possibly touch every student on that campus? Because that's our goal. It reminds me at conferences, we used to do this illustration where we had a student come up front and their job in 10 seconds was to go back in the audience and touch as many students as they could. So they did it, and they'd probably end up, some guys would fall over chairs, they're really ambitious and competitive, and they'd get like 30 or 40, and it was amazing, right? And there was a couple hundred kids in the room. Then they said, if you're touched by him, you touch someone else. And the result was everybody stood in the room who were touched. And so it just kind of illustrates that spiritual multiplication really is a rapid way of seeing more and more students touched by the gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine going onto a high school campus and thinking that I was going to reach every student on that campus by myself. But when you consider training people to share the gospel, and they train people to share the gospel, and they train people to share the gospel, it pretty quickly gets to the point where you could actually reach that whole campus. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And that's the concept of spiritual multiplication that we're all about in Crew. So the first point that we wanted to share today is that spiritual multiplication is better than addition. And that's what you just illustrated, Kevin, that I can go on and I can try to get face-to-face with everybody on that campus and share the gospel with them, build that relationship, get to them to the point where they want to accept Christ, and then move on to the next person. But that would take so long. However, if I can share Christ with someone, they come to Christ, and train them how to share Christ with someone else, and be discipling them, helping them know Jesus deeply, and then they're sharing with someone else. And we've talked about this before, how the campus is just this network of relationships. Yep. And someone on the basketball team is also over here on the track team or is in the drama department. And they have all these networks where they can reach people here and there. And it just spider webs all across the campus. And that's where we see real spiritual movement happening.
Yeah, I think if you're in this game called youth ministry seriously, you have to ask yourself, how much do I believe students can multiply their faith? I think it's an important question to ask. And I think it shows in just how often we are willing to give what we do away to them. That makes sense?
That's good.
It kind of brings us up to the second point. It really helps our disciples. When we decide that we want to see spiritual multiplication take place, we say that these students are capable and they can hold this body material and give it to somebody else. It helps them actually to own their faith. It gives them opportunities to trust God for things they'd never even imagined. I think one of the first things that my discipler did for me was the second day I was a Christian, he took me out sharing my faith and scared me to death, but it was a faith venture, and he was seeding me with the idea that, hey, I don't have to be here with you to share your faith. You can actually do this yourself. And so actually, Mark, what happens is if we don't challenge our students this way, it often happens that when they're juniors and seniors particularly, they lose focus and they lose interest because they're under-challenged. And so I think spiritual multiplication is a way in which we can keep our best students focused on the mission.
Well, I've seen that so many times. A ministry that doesn't disciple students well is going to be freshmen and sophomores. Because after that, they've been there, done that. They get bored, they've seen it. But when you're challenging people to spiritual multiplication and to taking leadership in your ministry, not only do they stick around, but they draw others because they're excited about it. They're like, oh, I get to do that? Yeah, you get to do that. And then they fail. And then you encourage them and show them that everyone fails, and you help them get back on the horse, and they love you for it. And that is a part of spiritual multiplication that we just can't ignore, especially on a high school campus.
That's good.
The third thing is that it goes beyond you. Spiritual multiplication is bigger than just you, and I love when we see spiritual multiplication happening, what you'll often see is that things will be going on that you never knew about. This guy shared faith with this guy, who shared faith with his mom, who shared faith with that woman, and you're hearing about it second, third, fourth hand, that things are going on out there that you had no idea about. This spreads like wildfire. And that's what spiritual multiplication does that spiritual addition can just never do.
Yeah. I would totally agree with you. Hey, our last point is very simple. You have to ask yourself a very serious question. Are you on the campus to reach students or to see students reached? I know it's a question we've asked before, but it's fundamental. I think if we begin to think about an ever-expanding company of believers, that's what Robert Coleman said in his famous book, The Master Plan of Evangelism. His idea of spiritual multiplication was we gather around us faithful people, and we let them do the work of the mission. It's not just us in this thing. And so I think that's the bigger thing. Are you there to reach students or to see them reached?
That's really good, Kevin. Well, we want to talk about 4 reasons why we often hesitate to move into multiplication. And so here we go. The first one is that we don't know how to multiply. We're often just ignorant of how to take the steps to multiply. Kevin, how would you answer that?
There is a ton of material out there that actually will walk you through some great material, and it'll actually show you. It's actually designed as a transferable idea, and it'll train and equip you to go after this whole idea.
That's good, Kevin. Okay. Well, how about this one? We're reluctant to have a messier ministries. And we've touched on this before, too, that when you put students in charge, when you try to multiply, it's just messy. It's not as tight and clean. Can you address that one?
Mark, have you ever dipped strawberries in chocolate? Are you ever not messy when you do that? Hey, student ministry is like dipping strawberries in chocolate. The messier sometimes the better. And here's the bottom line. The students in that meeting or in that Bible study that are watching their fellow student be a little more messy than we would be, a little less professional, they don't care at all. Actually, they're invigorated and inspired because they can see themselves in their same shoes.
All right, you sold me, Kevin. That's really good. How about this one? The immaturity of some students, like freshmen, they're just too immature to spiritually multiply.
Let's face it, how many freshmen have you wanted to strangle? Right?
Many.
But it's amazing. Here's my response. It is amazing if you hang in there with students, how much, just think of this, how much they grow from in the summer between their freshman and sophomore year. All right? If you don't see them for a little while, it's all of a sudden what happened. All right? And not only physically, but also socially, emotionally as well.
Yeah. And I'll add one thing to this one, Kevin. I would say that the beauty of having a ministry that has spiritual multiplication going on in it and student leaderships in it is that those freshmen, you wouldn't want them to lead right now. They are seeing older students that are multiplying and that are doing it. And they're seeing that as normal in the Christian life. And so when they do get old enough to, maybe they're a little more mature, they will be some of your best multipliers, some of your best student leaders, because you're modeling it with these older students.
Yep.
How about this one, Kevin? It's easier to do it yourself. I would just rather do it myself because, again, they're not going to do it well. Tell me about it.
On this one, I'm going to agree with you. Just kidding. I think we get a better, a deeper ministry when we can give it away. Think about this. Are we the end-all for every need that any student would have to come to us? I think it's a little presumptuous. I think as we give it away, we realize that spiritual multiplication is going to be the only way in which this whole campus can be reached. It's very easy to do it.
Very good. All right, Kevin, thank you for that. Well, just as a recap, we talked about 4 main points. One is that spiritual multiplication is better than addition. The second one is that it helps your disciples own their own faith more. The third one is that it goes beyond you like wildfire. And the fourth one is that we are here to see students reached, not to reach students.
You know, this is just touching the tip of the iceberg on this whole idea.
Yep.
If you want more information, we would recommend, as I mentioned before, The Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman, written a long time ago, but still the gold standard when it comes to spiritual multiplication.
Really
and also, some materials that have been written more currently is in our Thrive studies. Discipling Others series is an excellent place to start to really learn more about this.
I like it. And so we've got a question for you guys. Who are 2 student disciples you know who could become spiritual multipliers? Write them down. Make a decision right now to say, I'm going to give this a shot. It'll transform your ministry. Hey, if you like what we're talking about, and we love it, we invite you to join our community by subscribing, liking, sharing. Help us to spread this message of people reaching students on high school campuses. And remember, when in doubt,
Go to the campus.